Hello, friends. A very good evening to everyone. My name is Dhanunjay Reddy, and I am here to take one more session on international politics, that is, on the theories of international politics. In the last class, we have discussed about the Westphalian world order and how international relations, or as such, the discipline in international theories has evolved. See, I am going to take the classes for PSIR students who are preparing for Union Public Service Commission. In this, I have started with international relations. In the past class, we have discussed the evolution of the discipline as such, how international relations or international politics has evolved. In the last class, let me give you a brief idea before going into this class. That is, today we are going to deal with Realist School of International Relations. Before going into that, I just want to revise what we have discussed in the last class. The first thing that I want to discuss is, I discussed in the last class, is how the subject was evolved. We discussed that in political science and international relations is the youngest discipline of political science, and it has evolved only after 1919, that is after the First World War. And we have also seen the reasons why this school has emerged. The reason is, in First World War, many students in USA and many students in Europe have taken part in World War. As a result, they were dead as a result of the war. Now people have thought, okay, many young students were dead. We have to do something to avoid these type of situations in future. So it was in 1919 that the US president has called for a new world order. And the then US president was Woodrow Wilson. He has established the first chair or first department for studying the international relations as a discipline in 1919 at University of Wales. We have also seen that the first head or the first chair has been led by Mr. Alfred Zimmern, who was also a liberal theorist. From that place, that is after 1919, the theory or the subject has taken roots. So we can call that international relations is a very new subject, or it is a very new arena in political science. And it has emerged only after First World War. We have also seen why it has emerged, I have said just now, and what are the means that it has emerged. The US President Woodrow Wilson has called for new world order. In the last class, we have seen what is world order, and we have also seen, in order to understand the new world order, we have to understand what is world order as such. In the old world order, I have said the classifications of world order. In the ancient times, there used to be Greek cities. In the medieval times, there used to be Roman Empire, and then it has given rise to the two battles, that is Westphalian world order. That is, in the Roman Empire, there used to be a constant battle for dominance between the church and the state as such. There were two players. One is the church, the other one is the states. There was a constant battle between them. And the war has continued from 1618 to 1648. For 30 years, the war has continued in order to say who is the sovereign authority. This war was ended in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. So the Treaty of Westphalia was signed in the year 1648. As a treaty, as this is treaty, there were some contracts which were made in the treaty. The first contract that they said is that they agreed in the treaty is that in international politics, or from now on, there will be no role of church in politics. It is only the states who will be acting as a final authority. So the Treaty of Westphalia has given complete authority to the states as sovereign authorities. So states were considered as sovereign authorities, which means there is no actor who is above the state or who is more powerful than the state. So states are entire units which are working. And moreover, in the last class, we have also seen that from 1648 until First World War, 1919, the entire politics of international relations was just revolving around Europe. The reason is USA has a policy of isolationism, that we have also seen, policy of isolationism. So USA was not taking part in world politics as such. And the other countries like India, developing countries, are world colonies at that point of time. So international politics was just the politics of European countries. So this was the Westphalian World Order. What is that Westphalian World Order? The period between 1648 to 1919, because it is after the Treaty of Westphalia that this world order has evolved. And in this world order, the players are states are the key units, and these states are confined to the European powers such as US, UK, the Great Britain, I mean UK, France, Spain, Italy, France, Denmark, Germany, Prussia, Austria, Hungary. So these were the states which were playing a dominant role. We have also discussed the school of idealism or the school of liberalism, how it has evolved. So this is the Westphalian World Order that we discussed. From Westphalian World Order, we have also seen the features of Westphalian World Order. What are the features? It is state-centric or statism, which means state is the ultimate authority. There is no authority above the state. As a result, states are having complete control on the external as well as the internal affairs, which means that there is no common authority which is governing all these states. So international politics of Westphalian world order resembled like the state of anarchy, and this anarchy is compared with the top's Hobbes state of nature. Why they have compared with state of nature, Hobbes state of nature? Similar to Hobbes state of nature, states, if you compare states with individuals, individuals have the ability, or individuals always went for power seeking, power mongers. So states are also seeking to gain more and more power. So this was the condition in the absence of a common authority at the helm of affairs. States were having complete control on their external affairs as well as internal affairs. States used to expand their power. Why their power was expanded? The only reason is that they want to have a complete autonomy, that is their sovereignty lies with them, so they have main function to protect their territory. As a result, they continuously expanded their power, and this state of affairs resulted in power after power. If one state is going to have more power, the other state feels that okay, this country is having more power, now I am in security dilemma, my security is in dilemma, so I have to expand my power, because power is a zero sum game, which means one power is not always balanced by other power. Either one country's power is more or less than the other power. So countries always were in a battle or always in a position to expand their powers. So the Westphalian world order was seen as expanding of powers, or they were power mongers across the world. So this was what we discussed in the Westphalian world order because of the anarchy. Anarchy means here doesn't mean that there is no lawlessness. Rather, it is the absence of supranational authority. For example, today the supranational authority is United Nations organizations. So there was no authority at that point of time. So this was the Westphalian model, and we have seen that this Westphalian model continued till 1919. After the First World War, the US President Woodrow Wilson has called to change this world order to a new world order. And in that, from that school, that is New World Order, there has emerged the first school of international relations, that is Liberal School of International Relations. And this Liberal School of International Relations was the idea of Woodrow Wilson. And then we have seen that Alfred Zimmern was the chair, and this was liberalism, was the basic principle which has made these theories to think about international politics, and they have framed the new world order in that way. So this was the first school that we discussed in liberalism and that we discussed it so far. Today, we are going to discuss one more important school of international relations, and that is the realist school of international relations. And this realist school has certain emergence. Today we are going to see how the realist school emerged as an alternative to liberal school. We are also going to see what are the features that these people have said. So let us go into the topic, realist school of international relations. So this school is one of the schools which was given in the theories of international relations, which was given in the syllabus itself. So we'll be looking at this. Now, similarly, what is the evolution of this school? The roots for the evolution of realist school goes back to post-World War. After the post-World War, as I just discussed, the liberal school has evolved. Based on the principles of liberalism, the liberal school was evolved. And What they thought? What are the liberal values that they thought? They thought that okay, man is a rational animal, and they had a very optimistic view of human nature. John Locke has said this. So, from John Locke's human nature, they said that okay, man is very rational and he is reasonable. So, they had a very optimistic view of human nature. As a result, they thought, in order to control wars or in order to extend peace, the solution is law. It was because of the absence of a supranational authority which is exercising law, there is anarchy in the world. As a result, wars are getting more and more. Our peace is being disturbed because of the absence of law. So, what these liberals said is, so we should have certain organizations which establishes this law. So they came out with the concept of the League of Nations. The League of Nations was result of because of this law. This is one international organization which was a liberal principle. After this, they also spoke about collective security. We discussed this. They didn't speak about balance of power because in the Westphalian world order, it was the balance of power which led to First World War. Which means, what is meant by balance of power? Here there is always a constant struggle for power seeking, power seeking, power seeking. Say for example, France is expanding its power, then automatically Russia will become aware that okay, it is expanding its power. Either I have to expand my power or I have to make alliances so that I can reduce or I can balance the power of France. So this was the thing. Either you go and depend on your self-help or go and form some alliances so that you can counterbalance the power of others. So balance of payment or balance of power was one thing which was belonging to Westphalian world order. So the new liberal schools at that point of time, they said that okay, don't go for balance of power, we go for collective security. Collective security is based on minimizing the power, not maximizing the power. We will see that in the coming days also. Now, they also propounded that along with international organizations, there has to be an economic interaction. The moment there is economic interaction, trade develops and people or the countries resist themselves from going into wars, because when there is interest of money or then when there is interest of economy, they try to resolve the conflicts in other way rather than going to war. So that was what they thought, and they said that democracy is the best form of government, because if there is democracy, people in that country have a right to say whether the state has to go to war or not. Then this democracy or the people will exercise restraint on the government from going to war. So these are the liberal principles that we discussed in the previous class also, right? So this is what we discussed in the last class also. Now this is liberal school of thought that we have discussed. Now we will be moving to the realist school. How realist school was emerged? Though this liberal school in 1919 it was emerged and it has established a League of Nations, this school failed to control the occurrence of Second World War. Unfortunately, even after forming of League of Nations under the principles of liberals, within just 20 years after First World War, Second World War occurred. This raised questions on liberal theories. People across the country or across the globe started questioning whether liberal principles has worked to control or to stop wars, because it was effectively not controlled, because within just 20 years Second World War was emerged. So what were your ideas? Your ideas completely failed. So there should be something or some alternative which should focus on preventing wars. I discussed in the initial days itself, that international relations, every school of international relations has only one objective, that is how to avoid war. Avoiding war is the ultimate objective of all schools of international relations. Liberals, they failed in avoiding the war, because within 20 years of their theory, there came the second point of war called the Second World War was emerged. So there was huge criticism across the globe on liberals. This gave rise to the second school of thought, that is called realist school of thought. So this is the evolutionary procedure how realism has evolved. Now see, World War II has taken place. It proves that liberalism was failed. As a result, realism evolved. Now, what are the features of this realism? Now, realism also says that yes, human nature is responsible for power, just like liberals. Liberals also believe that human nature is responsible for power mongering. But they say this is not as per Locke, this is as per Hobbes. What they say, as per Hobbes, man is a power seeking animal. It is not reason, but it is the fear of punishment which prevents people to have reason. It is the fear which installs reason and not other thing. So they said, if you want to avoid or if you want to inculcate reason, go for fear. So Machiavelli famously said, one of the realists, Machiavelli famously said that, yes, if you want to choose between fear and love, a prince has to always choose fear, because it is fear which can bring reason into man, and then that can establish peace. So they also said the same thing. Yes, human nature is very cruel as per Hobbes. So humans are power-seeking animals. As a result, go for fear. So what they said, fear can lead to peace. So the measures that they said is you go for punishments. You don't go for international organization, don't believe in law, go for punishments. And then they said you go for balance of power rather than this collective security. If you are going for collective security, you are minimizing your power and you are opening your gates, and threat is very near to your gates. So don't go for collective security, go for balance of power. And then they said go for deterrence. If we have that deterrent power, if we have power, then automatically other person will be deterred to attack on you. He will be having fear to attack on you. So what they say is, unlike liberals, they say that no, you have to look at the realistic side of the things and go for expanding your power in the form of balance of power. See, this is how the school was evolved. Realist school was evolved. And then note, schools of international politics has the ultimate objective of avoiding war. I just discussed now. And establishing peace. Peace is the ultimate objective of every school of international politics. Either it is realist school or it is liberal school, neo-realist school or feminist school, whatever the schools are, their ultimate objective is to avoid war. So this is the thing that I wanted to tell. I think it is clear. Let us move to the next. Now, there are key assumptions. What are the key assumptions of realism? Just like key assumptions of liberals, we are going to see the key assumptions of realism, and this is very important for UPSC. Give me a second, please. What are the key assumptions of realism? Let us resume, right? Realism is the most hegemonic school of all the schools in international politics. What do I mean by hegemonic? It is the most ultimate powerful tool or powerful school in international politics. And this is the dominant paradigm of international politics. The status of other schools of realism are just footnotes to realism, which means other schools of realism, we will see what are those other schools of realism, like neo-realism, defensive, offensive realism. So we see other schools, and they are all footnotes to the so-called realism. Realism is the first school or the hegemonic school, which has the dominant paradigms of international politics. That is the first thing. And what are the assumptions? The key assumptions are, again, they have taken the assumptions of Westphalian world order. So that is the reason why I said what is Westphalian world order and what are the features of Westphalian world order in my previous videos. If you have any doubt on how Westphalian world order was emerged, please go to my previous videos and watch those videos and come back here. Then you can understand how the things are moving on. So assumptions are based on Westphalian world order. What are those? Like Westphalian world order, they said state-centric world order, which means they consider that state is the ultimate actor in international relations. There is no other actor which is above or over the state. They don't consider any non-state actors. Either it may be terrorists, or either it may be MNCs, or either it may be TNCs, whoever you are. They don't consider other state actors. They only consider that states are the only actors in international politics. Even terrorism is sponsored by states. It is not non-state actors. So that was their ultimate thing. They say that there is no authority which is above the states, and state is the complete only actors in international politics. So this was the first assumption, and this assumption they have taken it from Westphalian world order, as we discussed. So this is a monistic approach, which means only one actor is monistic, only one actor. Who is that actor? State, and no other actors. This is the first assumption. The second assumption is international politics is anarchic. Why it is anarchic? There is no law or no authority above the state or over the state. As a result, every state is exercising its power on international politics. There is no common authority to say, okay, you have to go as per these rules, this state has to go as per these rules. There was no such authority. So, as a result, it was anarchic. International polity is anarchic, which means sovereigns, it is the sovereign states are the actors. There is no supranational authority. Let me remind again, here anarchic means it is not lawlessness. It is absence of national power or supranational power or common authority like United Nations organization. So they say that international politics is anarchic. Again, this is a feature of Westphalian world order. The third is they believe in as it is anarchic situation, we should behave or we should depend on ourselves for our survival. So they believe on self-help and not from the help of others. Don't give your security to other organizations. Depend on yourself. So this is what they say, self-help for survival. They don't depend on others. As a result of self-help, they try to maximize their power. So they want to take their own help. As a result, what they focus is they want to expand power. In that scenario, power maximization takes place. Every state try to have maximum number of power, maximum amount of power. Next, as a result, one state is expanding or maximizing its power, the other states gets insecurity dilemma. Their situation will be like other power is expanding, I have to expand my power. So this international politics is a politics of security dilemma. Why security dilemma? Power maximization is taking place and no one is quite sure who is going to attack on whom at what point of time. So that is one thing. So this unending struggle for power, so one cannot depend on morality or international law. So there is unending struggle for power. So don't depend on morality. There is no such thing called morality. There is no such thing called international law. You depend on yourself. So this is the key assumptions which realism says. So this is first thing which are very, very important that we have to remember. Let us see next one. Who are the intellectual precursors? Who has laid down the foundations for these types of schools? We know we study this in Western politics, Western political thought as well as Indian political thought. The realists such as Thucydides, who has written the War of Peloponnesian, the Peloponnesian War, Kautilya, our realist, Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu was the realist from China, Machiavelli, Hobbes. So these were the intellectual precursors for this realist school. They say that yes, power is the only way to avoid war. Fear is only way to ensure peace. So punishment is the only way to save yourself. Punishment, fear brings rationality. Otherwise, there is nothing called reason in human being. So these are the things that they say and they adapt for that. And in the interwar period, that is between 1919 and 1939, when the Second World War was about to happen, there was the emergence of this field, and the first scholar of realism is E.H. Carr. He has written a book known as 20 Years of Crisis. These 20 years he has observed and he has written a book called 20 Years Crisis. So he was the first scholar of realism in international politics. This was followed by, there is one more scholar called Reinhold Niebuhr. So this is one more scholar, Reinhold Niebuhr. After post World War II, there was one prominent scholar named as Hans J. Morgenthau. He has written a book called Politics Among Nations in the year 1949. He has seen the Second World War and he has written a book on the politics among nations. And he is called as father of realism, father of realist school of international politics. So it was the Hans J. Morgenthau who was called as father of realism, and these are the intellectual precursors for this international school of realism, right? This is what I mean, and we say now we will see why Hans J. Morgenthau is called as father of realism. What are his contributions? Morgenthau contribution. Morgenthau said that he has evolved a systemic theory of realism. Systemic theory. It is not like utopian model. Utopians are those like Woodrow Wilson, who said that liberal ideas will save you from war. Liberals or liberal ideas will protect yourself. Liberalism will save you from war. But this doesn't happen. So these are utopians. Don't go for utopian concepts. I am giving you a systematic theory of realism. So this was propounded by Hans J. Morgenthau. And in this systematic theory of realism, he gives 6 principles of realist school. He says, okay, I am going to give you 6 principles. This is the reality. You have to be bound by these 6 principles to prevent war. Otherwise, war is inevitable and you are going to suffer your people. So that is what this man said. And he calls it as a scientific view. Why scientific view? It is not an utopian view. It is based on observations. I am making this. So this is what Hans J. Morgenthau says. And what is the context under which, what propelled Hans J. Morgenthau as such to give these 6 principles? It is the conditions of the time. You know, after Second World War, there were some leaders in USA. It was Woodrow Wilson after First World War who has come out with the topic of liberalism, and he has given League of Nations concept. But Woodrow Wilson's concept was failed because within 20 years, Second World War has come. Now, during Second World War, there was one more man, Roosevelt. He was the US president and he was also speaking on the similar lines of the so-called Roosevelt. He was also speaking on similar lines of Woodrow Wilson, and he was speaking, okay, we should establish a liberal organization, we should establish democracy, we should establish economic orders, we should promote free trade, we should promote these things in order to prevent war. So these are again, he is also again, even after Second World War, he observed that his leaders, the US leaders, he is an US man, Morgenthau, he observed that his leaders were even preaching the liberalism even after the Second World War. Now what is the purpose? Your leaders failed to guess the Second World War between 1919 to 1939 through this utopian model, and even now you are speaking, even in 1949 you are speaking about utopianism. So in order to warn his leaders, this man has come out with a concept called realism, and he has given 6 realistic principles. Say, he said, okay, Mr. Roosevelt, look here. This is how international politics is played. This is not what you think. This is what is happening. You focus on this. Otherwise, you are going to make US to face world war. So this is what it is happening across the country, and this is the context which propelled Mr. Hans J. Morgenthau to give this school. Absolutely, this is a very great idea of Morgenthau to save his country from the dangers of the Europe or other powers at that point of time. So who are the influences on Morgenthau? The first influencer is Machiavelli. We just discussed Machiavelli as the realist school. He belongs to realist school, and he said that Machiavelli clearly said 2 things. In international politics, a prince should always give primacy to national interest. This was Machiavelli saying. Primacy to national interest. And then there should be strict separation between ethics and politics in foreign affairs. This is what Machiavelli suggested. Based on these 2 principles, Morgenthau expanded, or Morgenthau applied his realist school. So this is what about Morgenthau is. Morgenthau is systematic theory of realism, and he has given 6 principles of realist school. He is the first person to give these 6 principles in realist school. Hence, we call him as father of realism. We will see what those 6 principles are in the coming time. And then, what is the context in order to save or in order to alert his party leaders or his country leaders to be not utopian but to be realists. And the influences are Machiavelli. As we know, Machiavelli's primary interest is every state has to have primary interest of national interest, and there should be strict separation between ethics and politics. This is what dual ethics of Machiavelli is. We study that in Machiavelli Western political thought. Now we will see what are those 6 principles which Margwanto has contributed and which he claimed that they are scientific views. Right? The 6 principles of Margwanto. The first 2 principles which he says to his men is, like all politics, even international politics is a derivative of human nature. So it is the human nature which is guiding the international politics. And how is this human nature? Human nature, that is man, is animal dominandi, which means man is animal and he wants dominance. He wants power. So man is animal dominandi and he is power seeking. As he want to establish his dominance, he seeks power. Similarly, states are similar to this human nature. States are power seeking. So this is the first thing. Remember, states are power seeking. And then he says, as states are power seeking, the prime or the preservation of national interest is the prime motivation for foreign policies. If one state is making foreign policy, what is their goal? They always have this intention of preservation of national interest. This is their prime motivation of the states to have foreign policy. So if some state is making foreign policy, if India is making its foreign policy, the prime reason is preservation of national interest. There is nothing called service or anything. They have in their mind that national interest, their national interest has to be preserved. So because states are seeking power, and in this seeking of power, they have to preserve their national interest. So this is a second principle. And they said that national interest is always a dynamic concept, the third concept. It is dynamic. And national interest can be secured only by power. If you want to preserve national interest, you secure power. Otherwise, you are going to be out of this race. And power has dual character. What is this dual character of power? Power is a means to secure national interest. It secures your national interest. It is means to secure your national interest. At the same time, power is an end in itself. Power is the objective of all the nations. Understood? Power has dual functions. One is it can act as a means to have security, and power is an end in itself, because every state is trying to acquire power. That is their ultimate objective. Once you have power, your national interest will be saved. So this is the thing. Third point is national interest is always dynamic. So it can be secured only by power. Power has dual characteristics. And then he says, what is your ideology? Role of ideology in international politics. There is nothing called ideology in international politics. There is no ideology. If someone is saying that I have liberal ideology, no, that is not wrong. Ideology, there is no role of ideology in international politics. If someone is saying that they are following this ideology, then it is a mask to hide their real intentions. Let me tell you with an example. China. If China says that their ideology is peaceful rise of China, and if some country believes that, okay, China is saying that its ideology is to peacefully rise, and if we are complacent, okay, they are going to rise peacefully, and we are very okay with that, and if you start expanding your power, then automatically you are going to face war with China, because there is no such ideology called peaceful rise or anything. In international politics, these ideologies are just a mask to hide your real intentions. What is your real intention? Your real intention is to go and occupy Tibet, to go and occupy Arunachal Pradesh. These are the real intentions. But they say, okay, we are going for peaceful rise. But today what is happening? So what he says is, role of ideology, there is no role of ideology. Don't confuse leaders. So he warns his leaders again. And then the fifth principle is, what about the ethics and principles in international relations? He says, similar to Machiavelli, he says there is no role of universal ethics. There is no concept of universal ethics in international politics. Politics doesn't have anything called universal morals. Morals always depend upon at the given point of time. What is correct now, you do it. Whatever is correct to secure our nation, that is universal moral. So in international politics, don't apply your universal morality. If The time required to kill a person, though it is wrong, you have to kill the person because your national interests are the top priority. So that is what I mean by universal morals. It is universally wrong to kill a person, but to secure national interest, you can kill a person. So don't apply universal moral principles in international politics. This is what Hans-Joachim Morgenthau has said. And then he has said one more thing called there is an autonomy of discipline. What does this mean by autonomy of discipline? Look, Morgenthau has clearly stated that international politics is an end in itself, or it is a subject in itself. Don't confuse international politics with other things like ethics or law or economics. Because he said to his leaders, you are talking about free trade, you are talking about universal laws, you are talking about establishing a global organization who can protect you, who can give you the law. Don't depend on this law, don't depend upon its ethics. If you are thinking that through economics, through law, through ethics, if you want to save your country, then that is wrong because international politics as such is a separate discipline. It is an autonomous discipline. It requires its own way of understanding. It requires its own way of preparation. So don't confuse international politics with these three things. Say, for example, our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, has considered as have given a very great importance to universal law. That is, he recognized UNO, and when Pakistan has occupied Kashmir, he went to UNO. What is the result? Because he confused international politics can be solved through law. No, there is no such thing called law in international politics. And this can be applied to today's example also. Say, for example, if China is incurring into India, what is the response of India? India is banning some of the apps from China, thinking that it will create a deterrent. India is not allowing or keeping restrictions on the imports of goods of China, thinking that China will stop its expanding power. Is it happening? No. Why? Even you are blocking your software, or even if you are blocking any apps, still China is expanding its role or expanding its territorial aggrandizement. Why it is doing? Because economics has no way related to international politics. And if any state government thinks that by bringing economic pressures, if you want to twist the nose of the nations, no, it is not possible. So in autonomy of discipline is there, so don't confuse these things. So these are the six principles with which Mr. Hans J. Morgenthau has clearly stated realism is this thing. This is a reality which is happening in the country, sorry, across the globe. So you be aware, leaders, you have to be aware. Otherwise, you are going to make USA to fall into trap. So these are the six principles through which he wanted to give realism. So I'll tell you again, what are those principles? Like all politics, even international politics is a derivative of human nature. What is that human nature? Human nature is from Hobbes, that is power seeking animal. States are power seeking. So in this power seeking scenario, the prime motivations of the nations has to be protection of their national interest, preservation of their national interest. How this national interest can be preserved? National interest is a dynamic concept and it can be preserved only through power. And power has dual characters. What are those dual characters? Power is a means to preserve national interest. It is also a means, or it is also an end in itself. Every country tries to have more power by the end of the day. That is their objective. And role of ideology, ideology has nothing to play in international relations. If someone is saying that we have this ideology, it is just a mask to hide their real intentions. And then there is the role of principles. There is no principles or there is no universal morality as far as international politics is considered. What is moral is whatever is correct at that point of time to preserve your national interests. That is the ultimate morality in national interests or in international relations. And then he says that there is autonomy of discipline. That is, don't confuse your international politics to other disciplines. So these are the six famous principles which Morgenthau has said, and he called it as scientific because he has observed them and he has given them. So this is the reason why we call Hans J. Morgenthau as the father of realism. And now we will look at how, based on these six classifications, six principles, how he classified the states of that time. At that time, there was states were classified into three. One is status quoist. Who are status quoists? Who wants the system to continue as it is. They want the system to continue as it is. continue as it is, which means they do not want any change. Say, for example, USA is a status quo. They do not want, they want to enjoy their hegemony. They do not want their hegemony to be lost to other countries. So USA is a status quo. They prefer that, okay, I have hegemony. I don't want other country to interrupt into my hegemony. So they prefer for status quo. And there are some states which are trying for revisionists. They want to revive the existing order. Who are they? China. Example, I am telling you an example. China wants to counter US and they want to establish hegemony. So these are second types of states which are present in international politics. And the third one is imperialist. Imperialist are, these are revolutionary forces. Through revolution, they want to occupy entire globe. For example, Adolf Hitler, Mussolini. So these are the thinkers, or these are the people who wants to establish their hegemony. So these are the three types of schools which are present, three types of states which are present in the world. So Hans Morgenthau gives. So finally, what he concludes, Morgenthau concludes this: we cannot rely on international organizations or international law for peace. So don't say that by establishing certain organization like League of Nations, we can establish peace. No, you have to have diplomacy with foreign countries. You have to have balance of power. If you are unable to have power by yourself, balance yourself by forming alliances, counter alliances. You enter into alliances and counter alliances. Don't depend on collective security. Depend on balance of power. And then he says deterrence. Increase your power to such an extent that the other person deters to attack you, fears to attack you. So this is a way in which you can preserve your national interest. So these are the classifications, and these are what Hans Morgenthau has said. And there is certain criticism, like every school will have criticism. Hans Morgenthau has to face certain criticism. What are the criticisms of Morgenthau? Obviously, liberals criticize the so-called realist of Marxism. Morgenthau. What liberal says? There is one man called Stanley Hoffman. He says that he is just speaking about power. In international relations, apart from power, there are many things. But Morgenthau is just focusing on power. So here, he has reduced international politics into power monoism. Monoism means only one principle. He is speaking just about one principle, power monoism. But international politics has pluralism. There are many dynamics which are telling or which are shaping the international politics, but his concept is just minimized. So this was the first comment or first criticism from liberals. Feminists criticized Morgenthau for disregarding the ethics in international politics. They said that this man is propounding a theory which says that you should not follow ethics. So they said that you are disregarding for it. You have disregarded the ethics in international politics. So they criticized Hans Morgenthau. One of those criticisms were Anna J. Tickner, Anne J. Tickner. And then there is one more school called Neo-Realists who criticized this man called Hans Morgenthau. They said, famous neo-realist is Kenneth Walsh. He said that though Morgenthau has claimed that realism, his principles is scientific, this is not scientific. He says that whatever you said is not scientific. Just you are saying that it is scientific and you are giving. It is not scientific. Scientific means it has to involve some stats, it has to involve some facts. It has to be universal in application, but yours is not universal in application. We will see why Kenneth Walsh, or what is Kenneth Walsh's idea of scientific view of realism. So he criticizes this. For now, you remember Kenneth Walsh criticized Morgenthau for his science being not scientific. So this gave rise to, as this man has criticized, and this criticism gave rise to a new school in international relations called neo-realism. This neo-realism, as I just said now, Kenneth Walsh is a man. He said that this is scientific realism. So realism has given a way to neo-realism. Neo-realism is also known as scientific realism or structural realism. We will see what is that neo-realism or what is that structural realism which Kenneth Walsh has given in as a remark in his criticisms to Morgenthau. In the next class, we are going to see what is neorealism, what is the concept of Kenneth Waltz, and how he has taken the discipline a step ahead from realism to neorealism. So friends, today we discussed about realism. Before going to that discussion, I have clearly said how the subject was evolved from 1919 till 1939. What are the Westphalian world orders? I have also discussed and what are the certain features of Westphalian world order, because Westphalian world order is one thing which we have to understand in order to understand the new world order. The new world order was liberal world order, which was given by Roosevelt from 1919. So they were first schools of international politics is liberals. But liberals failed in achieving their goal. What is that goal? Peace. Achieving peace or avoiding war is the ultimate goal of international theories. But they failed. So as liberals has failed, it was in the year 1939, or it was during the interwar period, realists emerged. The first realist that emerged during this interwar period there was one man called E.H. Carr in 1939, who has studied this 20 years, and he has written a book called 20 Years Crisis. And then later, after 1949, after Second World War, there was this man, the father of realism, called Hans de Morgenthau, who has come onto the front, and he has warned as a warning to his leaders, because who was speaking about liberal ideas even after the Second World War. He just wanted to warn, and he came with 6 principles. And this man was called as Hans de Morgenthau, who has written all these theories in his book known as Politics Among Nations. And in this book, which was written in 1949, he said all these things. As he has given this scientific approach, as he is the man who has given an analysis for the first time in a systematic way on international politics as in realism, this man was called as father of realism. And we have also seen what are those 6 principles. We have clearly seen what are the states on which Hans de Morgenthau has divided. And we said, he concluded that, okay, you don't depend on peace, rather you have to go ahead with expanding your power. However, there were certain criticisms. Like any school, this school also has certain criticism. The criticisms were from all quarters. That is, one is from liberals, obviously. The second one is from feminists. And the third one is from neo-realists called Kenneth Waltz. Neo-realists said that this is not scientific, though Hans de Morgenthau has said that it is realist or it is scientific. In the next class, we are going to see the neo-realist perspective and how the subject was evolved, or how the subject has been taken by Kenneth Waltz from Hans de Morgenthau. Tonight, this is the thing that what I wanted to discuss. I think you like the video. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Have a nice day.